Hi everyone at Flinders Christian Community College in Tyabb. It's Adam here, and I just wanted to, first of all, just give you a little video prompt, a little reminder of those things that you might have forgotten about in our professional learning session that we conducted on the 30th of January. And the one thing that I want to start this little clip with is a thank you. I really appreciate the wholehearted way that you tackled the day, and I asked you at the very beginning of the day to chase one rabbit, and that was your practice. And I really feel like we had a room of people who committed to that, and so I thank you, because I think through that process we got ourselves a fantastic outcome. Along the day, I guess what we're really looking to achieve through the professional learning as an impetus for the future is we're trying to move from implicit practice to an explicit framework. And so the components of that we explored on the day include a very restorative framework, and probably the best way for everyone to remember about how they can engage with that framework is the operating domains of to, not, for, and with. And just remembering that at times intentionally and at times accidentally you will leave the with box. And whatever your motive is for leaving that with box, it's really important that you remember to map your way back. Know the direction that you've fallen out, whether it was accidental or whether it was intentional, and then take the steps in an appropriate length of time to move yourself back to the with box. Another component of the day that we explored was the idea of a fair process and what was involved in that. But first of all, what we did before we looked at those components and those elements was that we had a really good look at where people engage. Do people engage more with a fair process or more with a fair outcome? And we looked at several examples around the room of the way that students will actually cop a very difficult outcome from us and a very challenging and perhaps even unfair outcome if they feel that the process that we have coordinated is fair. And so we looked at the three principles, and yes, they all begin with E, and I'm going to get you to look sideways at each other to see if you can remember what they are now. So I'm not going to tell you what they are right at the moment, but I really want you to have a think about, are you incorporating those principles of a very fair process in the way that you're working with young people, particularly around the idea of conflict. One of the other key pieces out of the day was looking at those restorative questions, and I want you to know that you can use those cards, pop them in your lanyard for yard duty, put them up on the wall in your classroom, but more than anything, remember that they are a guide. They're there for you to use in a time-appropriate way to be able to move any situation from a past to the present to the future. And any of the questions that you might decide to squeeze in between, or any of the counselling techniques that you would like to use, are actually quite appropriate if you're sticking to that theme of moving from past to present to future, and getting the kids to focus on what the harm is and having their actions directly linked to that harm. And then probably the last thing that we sort of didn't go into too much detail around was the idea of the theory behind restorative practices, the research behind it, and the conferencing techniques that can be used at the pointy end. And we'll do more of that next year, but we quite deliberately stayed at the informal end of the restorative continuum because there's just so many interactions there. And that's where we can get some fantastic traction in terms of transforming and enhancing the culture of your school. And it's also the reason why in the afternoon we stepped away from moving along the continuum to just look at that end and what's the great classroom practice and lenses that you can use to view student behaviour, such as Joe Lang's t-shirts, that will allow you to continually and consistently use practice under that restorative umbrella at that informal end, and you'll find you'll get some incredible gains there. So where to from here? I'm really looking forward to coming back and working with you in class. Remember, as Richard and the team are helping you pull together my timetable for that day, we want to make sure that the themes that we work on are those that work for you, best for you. So we really want to know where your barriers and where your challenges are, and make sure that the day is tailored to get maximum impact. But also remember that there are three modes in which I will show up to your room. Number one is that I'll show up and model something for you. Number two is that I can co-teach with you. And number three is that I can observe and provide you with feedback about the way you're going restoratively. So wherever you feel you can get the maximum impact is what will happen on that day. We'll also run our parent information session and do everything we can to make sure that parents are aligned with both the vision and also the framework and also the types of practice that you're using to try and help commit to that building citizen goal and aim that we have. We're going to provide some mentoring for your leaders, and for the implementation team we'll provide some coaching along the trip for teachers who might be hitting barriers, not now but into the future, so that means that we can stay in touch together. We're going to keep the connection going, so make sure you keep thinking about you using that Twitter hashtag of Restorative FCCC, and we'll keep the conversation going there. You'll also have membership components, which means through to Richard and the team, he'll get every month a teacher practice article, he'll get a cultural leadership article, and you'll get a little short video that might prompt some really great conversation at a staff meeting. But more than anything, I want you to pay a little attention to some of the clips that are coming onto the screen at the moment, because the real gift, the real movement happens in restorative practices when you're committed to professional dialogue around practice. And the gift of that dialogue often presents us with some amazing, emergent, fantastic, innovative practice that can really do fantastic things for your school, can transform results, and can completely change the way that we're effective and the way that teachers experience stress in our schools as well. So it's just so important that no matter how busy you get this year and no matter how many multiple accountabilities pop up, that we constantly commit and we constantly find ways to immerse ourselves in even short periods of professional dialogue around practice. And I just know that when you do that, when you get that going, the enthusiasm that we had on the day and the productivity that we had on the day that we spent together will make sure that it adds up for something other than a good day of professional learning, because that's hugely important. And look, the last part of this clip is just your exit interview. So I want to thank you very much for making a broad range of commitments, all of which will provide a fantastic starting point for FCCC Tyabb. So I know that those are really going to give you a great impetus and really get the ball rolling. And if you get that going, I know that you'll get excitement out of it, you'll get enthusiasm, and you'll feel like tackling more and more and more as we go, because small steps are the way to begin when you're looking at building a restorative school. So thank you very much for your enthusiasm. I am incredibly excited about coming along and working with you again in the future, and I'm going to see you all really, really soon.
I'm going to become more of a committed teacher and create some caring students.
Make 3 posters, one of the past, one of the present, one of the future. On the past one it'll say what happened, in the middle it'll say how does it make you feel, and the third one will be how we're going to fix it, because I've done that sort of thing before in the past but never thought of posters, so I thought that would be an effective way for the grade leaders.
I'm going to create as many opportunities as possible for students to connect with each other and with me to build really positive relationships in my classroom.
I'm going to timetable circle time for years 4 to 6, and we'll do that often.
I'm going to use the reflective window on a weekly basis so I can evaluate my own teaching, and I'm going to use circle time in my class to build a culture.
I'm going to build those rope connections with kids rather than the thread connections and teach them how to make those rope connections.
I'm going to find the hook that engages each student.
I'm going to use those questions when on yard duty.
I'm going to strengthen my relationships with the kids and try and make those threads even stronger.
Hi Mum! I'm going to try and involve the kids more in the future step of the conversation.
I hope to connect with the kids more and to be more positive in the directions and things that I give, rather than say not to do something, but this is what we are going to do.
I'm going to use the 2 lines of how you're doing and what's been going on more often to connect with the kids better.
I'm going to react unexpectedly.
I'm going to introduce myself, tell my story, and just try and get on their side, ignore some of the bad behaviour and reward the good behaviour.
I'm going to take a breath when things get tough, and I'm going to be real.
I want to train my students to be caring students.
Well, I think I'll revisit the way that I know the students, recognize the 4 t-shirts, make me t-shirts especially.
What I'm going to do is take out the don'ts in my classroom guidelines and start with the do's.
I'm going to ask students why they acted in the way they did when they muck up, rather than tell them what they did.
I'm going to ask students why a lot more about their actions and find a bit more and dig deeper rather than just hand out consequence straight away.
I'm going to encourage my students to learn how to care about each other, and I'm going to demonstrate that to them.
I have a Year 12 homeroom this year, so my focus is going to be on making them care for others, making them want to care about everyone else's problems, and just generally paying more attention and listening to each other.
I'm going to put a particular emphasis on reflective practice and examining what isn't working and making changes accordingly.
I'm going to do some circles.
What I'm going to do, because I'm new, is because I'm going to start my relationships with every senior school student as I can and say g'day and make sure to smile every day. Really important.
I'm going to try my best to create an environment in which students want to care.
I'm going to find out one thing at least about each student that I come into contact with on a regular basis.
I'm going to be more thoughtful about my interaction with students.
I'm going to change my What's On newsletter to include more of the how and the why.
I'm going to greet my students every day by name, at least some point through the day and as early as possible, and get to know as much about them as I can and their families, and to use these cards regularly.
I'm going to shoo away the flies. No, I'm going to remember these questions and ask students what's going on, what's happened.
Going to do?
I'm going to look more at the small things at the informal end of the continuum.
I'm going to say, how you doing? And how you doing? And I'm going to start by practicing on my children.
I'm going to try and make the conversations significant. Tune into what the kids are thinking and wanting out of the year and remember it.
I'm going to work on listening actively and really connecting in as much as I can with the kids I'm working with.
I'm not quite certain how, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to try the how you doing check-in, check-out circle. Not sure when and where, but that'd be good. I'll be keeping the domain framework graph in mind as I work day to day, and I know, I'll be keeping that handy.
What am I going to do? I'm going to be explicit, I want to be fair, and I really want my teaching to not be outcome based but to be meaningful and relevant.
I'm really keen to use the circles with my home group on Mondays. That will be the first thing. What I don't want to do is resolve the restorative questions, but I will use them in the next conflicts I will have, and I'm keen to see what difference it makes. Thank you.
To do, I'm going to be more conscious of responding rather than reacting. I'm going to use the restorative questions rather than just sort of reacting to them. I'll ask them a question so that there's more discussion, I suppose. And I'm definitely going to use that 2 truths and a lie in my first class on Tuesday.
I'm going to tangibly and regularly show my appreciation for my staff.
I'm going to try and think before I ask students to pick up rubbish like you suggested and use those disappointment words.
I'm really interested to watch the Waiting for Superman documentary, and also I guess it just encourages me to dialogue with the students and to ask them those questions about why and what happened and how they're feeling, so more dialogue.
Okay, what I'm going to do is, I reckon our culture is relationship orientated. I know the kids, I know a lot of the parents. I reckon I've got to get to the teachers a bit more, so just continue to build relationship, find out more about the teachers, because they're the important part of this whole deal. So we'll make it happen. I've just got to work at that.
I was very impressed with the first section when you talked about the continuum. And on that continuum, the Restorative Practices continuum, you had informal relationships through to formal relationships. Most of my relationships with students and parents and staff are certainly at that right-hand side, at the formal end. And I need to back that continuum back, to put those spots of S, P and U more back towards the informal stage, develop those informal relationships. I'm a relational person, but I don't allow myself the opportunity to build those relationships.
I'm going to actually trial 2 things. More informal circle work, and most importantly for me is look at the 3-minute rule. I think one of the things that I do a lot with at the moment is have those grade 6 to year 9 sort of girls in period 4, period 5, come into my office spending 50 minutes while I'm trying to wade through what's actually going on. 3 minutes past, 3 minutes present, 3 minutes future. It's the way for me.